Hi, welcome back to another Not Yet Millionaires episode. This is our 7th episode. I'm your host, Zainal.
Kainoa Lam.
Reagan's son.
And Finn Evanson.
And today here we have our special guest, Dewey Mackay. So, Dewey, thank you for coming on today.
That's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, I guess starting off, would you like to share a little bit about your background and like what you kind of do?
Sure. So how far do you want me to go back? Or do you want me to just kind of tell you where I am today and then we can go back?
The womb. No, I'm just just basically just started around college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit about my background. I actually came from a long line of doctors. And so my father was a doctor and my grandfather was a doctor and my great-grandfather was a dentist. So there was a lot of medicine in our family, and I had always planned on going into medicine. And I went to Brigham Young University, and my freshman year I took all sorts of classes, and most of them were geared towards medicine and going to medical school, but I did not enjoy any of those. I took, I believe, chemistry and physical science and biology, and I just did not enjoy those.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy those classes. And after a year at Brigham Young University, I served a mission for the LDS Church. And while I was out there, I had two mission presidents, and both of them were entrepreneurs. They were very much businessmen, and they were entrepreneurs. And I came back to...
where did you go?
I served my mission in England.
Oh, cool.
It was the Birmingham, England.
Oh, sorry. Do you speak British?
I'll tell you, I had studied Spanish for 6 years in school, and so I thought for sure I'd go Spanish speaking, and I ended up doing an English speaking mission.
Cool.
And you cannot replicate that accent. I will tell you that much. But I came back and I just knew at that point I wanted to go into business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur of sorts. And my sophomore year at BYU, if you wanted to get into any of the business programs, there were a number of prerequisites you had to take. And those were accounting, economics, business law, statistics. And these were very different classes than all these medical classes, these pre-med classes I had taken, or science classes my freshman year. And I took all these prerequisites to get into the business school, and I absolutely loved them. I loved accounting, I loved statistics, I loved business law, MCOM 320. These are all the requisites back then. I don't know exactly what they are today. I'm sure they're similar. And I just knew that this is what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to go into business, and I didn't know exactly where. And at BYU, they have a lot of great degrees you can go into. I looked at finance, I looked at economics, I looked at accounting, and I really felt I could go into any of those degrees. They were all incredible degrees, but BYU does have a special accounting program, and so I thought you can't go wrong there. And so I graduated in accounting. So that's a little bit about my background, and which has kind of led me where I am today, 20 years later, which is kind of it's kind of a long road, and maybe we'll get into bits of that as you ask more questions. So
yeah. So do you have any like job experiences from when you were growing up or whatever, like in college, internships or whatnot?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think a lot of people ask, what should I be doing when I'm in high school, when I'm in college, and I don't know if there's any perfect answer to that. And I asked the same question. So when I was in high school, what did I do? I did the typical things. I was very, very involved in high school in extracurricular activities. I was on the swim team for 4 years, and I was in student government, and I did social sciences, and just did a lot of extracurricular activities. Work-wise, I think in high school, anything you can do just to give you good experiences. As far you won't get the most memorable work experiences in high school. You're just trying to get some work experience and make some money, and you have some spending money. So, certainly do something that you enjoy, and if not, just make some good money. As far as college, I only had two summers. And one of the summers I did have an internship, in the accounting program. I ended up working for Ernst & Young, and I did an internship in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Wow.
So that was between my junior and senior year, and I think internships are very very productive and definitely encourage them. Some industries and fields have more internships than others, but certainly in most business fields you can find a great internship, and most people do it between their sophomore and junior year, or junior year and senior year. So.
Yeah. You mentioned you worked at Ernst & Young. Could you explain what you did while you were working there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Back when I graduated, I think it was the Big Six back then, and now I believe it's the Big Four. And I worked for Ernst & Young. I did an internship, and then I graduated in accounting, and I spent about 2 years, another 2 years working in the accounting field. I really focused on the audit side. So in accounting, you really specialize primarily, generally speaking, in the audit or in tax.
Yeah.
And the tax people are really smart and meticulous, and that wasn't me. So I went under the audit side, and then I spent a couple of years really focused on entrepreneurial. They had an entrepreneurial services division when I started, and really focused on that. Now those are still pretty big companies.
Yeah.
Because if you hire a public accounting firm like EY or one of the others, you're usually pretty significant at that point, and you have a reason to have that kind of professional services group come in. So I did. After I graduated from BYU, I had an option to go back to DC. I even looked at the San Jose office, and I settled on Irvine, California. So I was in Southern California and spent a couple of years there. So that was my first work experience, and it was great. I think when you come out of college, get some real good corporate experience and just see how the real world works, and what it's like to work I wouldn't say 9 to 5, because many careers, especially out of college, require many more hours, and so did public accounting. And during our busy season, you were usually working 60-hour weeks, 65-hour weeks, which lasted about 4 months of the year. But had a great experience. Really, learned what it was like to be a professional, to work in teams. Learn all sorts of systems, protocols. What's it like to be an employee? I mean, those are all really invaluable experiences you get, right out of college. So.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
So, if I can ask you a question, so was there one point in your time, like in your life, when it was like a scary point in your time in your life when you didn't really know, like, what you were gonna do in the future, and you kind of just like let things happen, or like, I don't know how to explain it, because I know some teenagers, and like even me, it was like still kind of scary thinking about like what I'd be doing in the future, right? Because I know I want to go into like entrepreneurship, but just like that scary feeling of like what's gonna happen, or like kind of directing you what to do. Because I remember when we talked early, or like before, we talked about how there's like all these it's a wide variety of like entrepreneurship, or like it's broad, it's a broad spectrum. So could you kind of explain a little bit about that?
That's a great question. I mean, there are some professions in life that have a more direct path. If you want to be a doctor, you pretty much do pre-med, you go to medical school, you do have to choose a specialty at some point, which is important. You do a residency and maybe a fellowship and set up a practice, right? So there is a pretty narrow path and a direct path in something like that, even to be a lawyer, right? You take your prereqs to get into law school, you take the LSAT, and you go to law school for 3 years. Again, you'll probably choose a specialty in law and where you want to practice. There's a lot of different areas you could practice law. Entrepreneurship, man, that can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really focused on entrepreneurship, it could come from anywhere, meaning, after 20 years of my business experience, maybe a little more, I don't want to age myself, but I have many successful friends who have been entrepreneurs and started amazing companies. And I've seen some who have master's degrees. I've seen some who have just a bachelor degree. I have friends who are incredibly successful entrepreneurs who didn't go to college. And so when it comes to entrepreneurship, there are so many paths to get there. And I can't say, you know, what's the best path. Everyone's got to choose it. I mean, we certainly know if you look at some of the most successful, you know, founders and creators in the world, from, you know, an Elon Musk who went to college for a year and it wasn't for him, and, you know, obviously extremely bright and smart person, and, you know, he forged his own path, and other people who have created incredible companies have done that through going through college or maybe getting a master's degree. So, and you asked a great question, you know, have I felt uncertainty? Certainly everybody has, especially being an entrepreneur, because you don't know if that opportunity to grow a company or a service, or, you know, to really contribute to the world, it might come when you're 26 years old or 25 years old. It might come when you're 40.
Yeah.
Right? You just never know. You never know when the right opportunity or the right company or the right idea comes together, the right team, the right money. I mean, there's so many things that go into being successful, and you just never know when that's going to happen. I've had friends start companies at 25, and by 30 they're extremely successful. I've seen friends start companies at 35 and be successful. And I've even talked to others who said, I didn't make my first millions or $1 million until I was in my mid 40s, and then 20 years later, you know, they've been extremely successful. So, you know, when that opportunity, when that, you know, maybe you say that lightning is going to strike, you just never know. As an entrepreneur. Certainly, you know, for some it comes very early. They just kind of walk into the right opportunity, and it strikes maybe in their 20s. Others maybe go out into an industry and they spend 10 years learning a profession or an industry or a trade, and then they start something in their mid 30s. Some do it in their 40s. So, you know, I don't know. There's no doubt you feel uncertainty. I mean, even after I, probably from 25 to 35, I always felt a little uncertain. What am I doing, and where's my opportunity? And, you know, I saw other friends start companies, and some were successful very early, and some it took later. So, you know, I think it's okay not to know. And I also think it's something that's hard. You can't really force it. You can't get to a certain point in your life and you're like, okay, I'm ready to start a company. Maybe that happens for some. Others, it just is the right time, right opportunity. You have the right skill set. I do think it's important that you do learn a skill set, whatever that is, whether that's finance or operations or marketing, because even as an entrepreneur, you know, you've got to be able to fall back on there's something you really bring to the company, or a certain, you know, a certain knowledge in an industry where, you know, you can just go out and you can say, I know this industry, I spent 10 years in it, and I can go build a better product or a better service. So I don't think it's something you force. I've just spent 20 years watching, you know, entrepreneurs start at various levels of their career, various ages, and you just never know when the right timing is for you to try something.
Yeah, I like what you said about like picking one thing and like getting like really good at it. It's basically like I don't know, like picking something that you're good at, and then like keep working on that one thing until you become like an expert at it, and you'll basically have like a competitive edge over everybody else. And like if you go into that industry, you like know a lot more than other people who might have like not worked so hard like on that industry, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Like it's basically just like picking a profession or like something you're good at, like a niche, I guess, like and then just like working really hard at it until you become like an expert at it. But I also wanted to like ask a question. Like during your mission on your LDS mission to England, you said you met 2 of your mission presidents, and then like because of them you went into like accounting or something. I was just wondering like why did you like listen to them, I guess? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you know, for some people they'll understand LDS missions. That's an incredible learning experience for young men, and you know, the mission presidents, they're the leader, and you know, I guess you could look at them as almost the CEO of your mission, right? And they were very influential and very successful and wonderful people. And it was a combination of just seeing how much they had passion for what they did, and also how successful and how much I respected them. But I just knew that what they had done, I'm like, I want to replicate this.
Oh.
Right? I knew that as I kind of listened to their experiences and what they had done and how much they had enjoyed their careers, I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Oh, I see.
Now, how again, you can't define it at that age because you don't know what it's going to look like, but you just know as I listened to them, and they were both in their, probably 50s and 60s, as I listened to their lives and as I got to know them and learned about their careers, I'm like, that's what I want to do. Something similar to that. And so that was kind of the basis of me coming back. And again, 20 years ago when I was in college, they didn't really have an entrepreneur path. I think today in college, and especially in the business programs, they have many more courses geared to entrepreneurship, and they didn't have a lot back then. So again, I looked at both accounting, economics, finance, something business related. And I felt like I really could have gone with any of those.
Yeah.
I think any of those would have been wonderful backgrounds, to be able to go down any entrepreneurial path. But again, BYU had such a good accounting program, it just made sense to do that.
Yeah.
So, what do you think the greatest aspect of entrepreneurship is, like, to you as a successful person?
Wow, that's a really good question. The greatest aspect, I mean, now that I as I look at them, and maybe we haven't even told the audience so much, what I do today, and I have the last 12, 13 years, is I'm an early stage investor. Right, and so
you invest in like small companies.
I invest in very early stage, and the reason I do that is because I am so passionate about entrepreneurship. I absolutely love someone who is willing to take an idea on a product or a service and say, I'm going to go build a company around this. I'm going to offer it to the world. I'm going to build a company. I'm going to create a customer base. I'm going to create jobs and employment. And I just love that. I don't know if there's anything better in the world, in my opinion, to society than to create a wonderful company that creates a product or a service, employees, your vendor relationships, your customer base. I mean, I just can't think of anything better, especially if it's a wonderful, if it's a value add to society, in any product and service. And so, I've spent the last 12 years evaluating companies, and there are a lot of things you look at. I mean, and everyone's got their template, and you look at any VC or venture company, and they've got their whole series of questions. But one of those, I think everybody looks at, and maybe this is what they bank on, is, do they believe in that individual to succeed? Right? And it's not always easy to know if you don't know them really well, but you have to bank on them that no matter what difficulties they incur or how difficult the road is, that they're going to be able to rise above it. They're going to find a solution. And so I look at many criteria as I'm evaluating an opportunity to invest in, but at the very top of that list, and maybe weighted more than anything else, you have to get to know that person on somewhat of a personal level, or that team. It might be one person, it might be a whole team, and you have to be willing to look at them, evaluate their character, and say, do they work hard? Are they going to sacrifice? Are they doing it for the right reasons? Do they have integrity? I mean, you're really doing a character analysis more than anything on this, again, whether it's one person or it's a whole team, you're really doing a character analysis on them, which is not easy to do when you don't know them. Sometimes you invest in people that you know, and you're like, hey, I've known that guy for 10 years, and I'll bank on that person, right? But that is something you look at very, very closely, is you're looking in depth at that character. Because being an entrepreneur, listen, maybe for some it is an easy path, but for many it's failure after failure after failure, and it's quickly failing and being able to pivot and change and make adjustments and do it, and making very quick decisions. And again, you have to believe in their judgment, their character, their tenacity. And so I would say at that very top of that list is this in-depth character analysis that you really have to do on somebody.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes you don't even know them, so it's difficult to do.
That's like a great point. It's like more of like, it's like an idea could be worth a lot, but it really matters about like the person who has it. Like if you have like a really good idea, but the person isn't hardworking, then the idea is like worthless. But if you have someone who's hardworking and willing to put in the work, then that idea could be worth like a lot.
Yeah, I feel like especially like in startups, during the startup stage of a company, the people is like the most important part, like the management and stuff, because like they basically like determine where the company will go and stuff like that. Yeah. So like you probably worked with a lot of CEOs and founders and people like that for like the companies that you worked with, the startups. So like what is like one personality trait like that you see that is common among all of those like successful CEOs and like founders and whatnot?
Well, again, there are many factors that'll play into whether they're successful. But if I had to, and we've already mentioned them, so I'll have to mention them again. I mean, if I had to name two, it's they're going to outwork everybody and they're going to be tenacious. I would say those two things, meaning, listen, there are a lot of smart people out there, but if you're willing to put in the extra time, again, a lot of solutions to problems, especially in business, it's just going to be, I've got to work and I've got to outwork this problem, and I got to be tenacious, and I'm not going to give up. You've got, I've seen entrepreneurs who are highly intelligent, and I've worked with entrepreneurs that are not as intelligent, right? I mean, they have other wonderful characteristics, but I would have to put that at the top. And again, if they are willing to just be tenacious and work and sacrifice, then you know that they're going to find solutions to problems. They're going to, and there are many others, leadership qualities and intelligence and understanding an industry. But again, I think hard work and tenacity are at the top of that list.
Yeah, like
you know what that reminds me of?
Hard work beats talent.
Yeah, but recently we read a book, Unstoppable, by Joshua M. Green, and it was more of like a biography from about this guy named Siggy B. Wilzig. He actually ran two companies. Well, he ran a oil company, and then he also acquired a bank after that. And so you explaining all these characteristics and personality traits kind of resembled in Siggy, because what he did, he was actually, like, some background of him was he was a Holocaust survivor, and so he's actually Jewish. And so when he moved to the Americas, right, it was like super hard for him, and he just kept working his butt off. Like, he was really hard worker. And so eventually, all that hard work paid off because he acquired two companies. But it took a lot to get there, right? Because like he was Jewish, and so all this like anti-Semitism and stuff like that. Like I remember. Do you remember the one part of the book? It was like when he went to the board to visit the board to.
Oh yeah, like he was trying to acquire their stock,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like, they wouldn't let him because they have like anti-Semitism, like towards Jewish people.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's literally the definition,
the
but
definition.
but they could not like imagine a Jew like
Running their company.
because there was very few Jews in that industry. I think it was the oil industry, right?
Yeah.
So they were just like very skeptical, not skeptical, like cautious about it. Like
Yeah.
they didn't want other people to think bad about the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, a Jew is running this company. Like no other company has done that before. So
Yeah, but eventually, he worked really hard at it and acquired more stock of it, gained more percentages, and then enough to like where they actually recognize his like hard work and his tenacity and all these stuff like that and the brains he had. And then so he became CEO of TC. No, that was the bank.
Yeah. Wilshire. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think like Elon Musk is a really good example of this, because I remember he was like in an interview, he was saying he gave up like all of his vacations for like it was like 8 years, and just worked on Tesla for like.
He was literally sleeping in the factory too.
Yeah, he was sleeping in the factory, and I think that just shows a lot, because like he became one of the most successful people of all time, and like I think that just shows because he put in that extra hours, and he gave up and he sacrificed his free time to work on a company that he really believed in, and that 100% paid off. So I think the hard work aspect of that really shows out in Elon Musk, which is very successful, and so I think that shows a lot.
Yeah, and also think like integrity is also one of the most important like personality traits aspects in like any business leader, because if you're not like honest, you're gonna obviously lead the company to some sort of like lawsuit or something, and then it just crash all down. Like for example, Bernie Madoff. He like ran the biggest Ponzi scheme. Everyone thought he was a genius. Everybody thought he was a genius, but he turns out to just be a huge scam. So
yeah, there's no doubt that's up there as well. I mean, you just want good people with good intentions, integrity.
Yeah, of course.
Who are of high character. Again, like I said earlier, you really do a character analysis, and it's not one thing. You know, we kind of listed maybe one or two, but you know, there's 8 or 10 things that you want to go through, and integrity is high on that list. That again, someone of high character and good intention and has the highest moral qualities as well. So really important to find those type of people.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you invest. I was wondering if you like invested in crypto or anything else.
You know, that is a great question, and it's really funny because today is the 13th of June, and it's funny. I've had about 3 crypto conversations today alone.
Aren't they like introducing the CPI or something to see if the market is in a crash?
Well, there's a lot going on in the macroeconomics. You know, crypto's a tough one. I am not an expert by any means, but I have read a lot about it. I follow it. You know, again, there's so many question marks about what it is and what the value is and how to define it and what the utility is.
Kano loves crypto.
Hey, you know, listen, the idea of it, there's so many great things about it, and the infrastructure and blockchain technology, and there are so many great things. I do think you have to be really, really careful because there are so many out there right now.
Yeah.
There's so many.
And I think there are many of those that are not legitimate and that are not going to be here long term. And so I think if you are going to do anything in the crypto space, you really need to do your research and understand, you know, what you're investing in, what their value is, you know, why it was built, what the utility is, if there is any, because there are a lot of them out there that are not legitimate. And so, you know, today obviously Bitcoin took a huge crash, and it's way down today, but you know, that thing is resilient. Every time it drops 80%, it goes back up. So, you know, I looked at it. So this tells you, I was looking at it as early as 2013 or 12. It was at $300.
Wow.
And I did a lot of research, you know, 7-8 years ago, and unfortunately at the time, the most legitimate voices were saying stay away from it. And I did a lot of research on it, and eventually just chose not to do it. And in hindsight, I should have. But you know, even if you're going to do something in the cryptos, I think if you looked at your portfolio, if you did have one, you might allocate some of that to crypto, maybe a small portion of it, just because it's a very interesting technology and it might have some legs in the future. But I think you have to be real careful too.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah, it seems like you found your path. Like you immediately knew like what you wanted to do once you've like seen it. Like you mentioned, like, you know, your mission presidents, you like saw like their entrepreneurship, like and you knew exactly like right then I want to do that. And so I guess like a question would be like, what is like one thing that like you would suggest teenagers to do to like find out what they want to do in the future, and like, you know, their passion and stuff, like find their passion basically?
Boy, that's a wonderful question. I don't know if I have the best answer for it. I mean, one thing I would recommend is just study a lot of careers. You know, when you're younger, I grew up in this small town in Utah, up in northern Utah, and had about 15,000 people, and it was a small town and had just an incredible upbringing. It wouldn't change a thing, but I wasn't exposed to a lot either. I wasn't in a big city and big town, big industry, so I had a very limited view on what professions were out there. You know, I didn't live in a big city. I didn't know, growing up, I didn't know the first thing about finance or banking or hedge funds or you know, even much about corporate America, because there are no big corporations in a small town in Utah. So I didn't have a lot of exposure. You know, you know what you know, and you know what you're exposed to, and everything else is, you know, isn't part of your you know, part of your paradigm. And you know, as you get older, you know, even in college and after, you start learning about careers. Like, I didn't even know that career existed. I wouldn't even know. So, you know, but we also live in an information age. Again, I did not grow up with the internet. The internet did not exist when I grew up. It was really being invented when I was in college. I didn't even do a whole lot on the internet, even in college. That was really about when it was being rolled out. So now you can really, you know, you can do all sorts of research, and you can learn about different careers. And of course, there's so many things on YouTube and other things. I mean, it's just nothing you can't learn about. I mean, that's the one thing I wish I had growing up, is just that. And maybe there's too much information now, but you can access information and learn about anything now. And back then, man, you want to learn about something, we pulled out an encyclopedia, and it was limited, and and it was paper bound, and there was not a whole lot you could do with it. And now you can learn about anything. You know, you only have limited time, meaning, you know, school's very important. I would say in high school and college, you know, focus on grades. It's important to do well and learn, and in your extra time, you know, if you have, you know, summers are a great opportunity to learn from, you know, various jobs, and certainly, you know, through your network of friends. I mean, I certainly have, you know, a vast network of professionals and friends who do all sorts of things. If anyone ever wanted to meet them or interview them or learn what they do, now you can do that, right? Yeah. Again, growing up in a small town, we didn't really have that. So again, you never know when your passion's going to hit. You may know at 17 what you're going to do. You may not know till you're 35 what you want to do. But you always want to have a plan, meaning this is my plan for now. I mean, it's the same as being an entrepreneur. You know, if you have a company, you have a plan, and you're going to go with that plan until there's a reason to deviate. And that's the same thing in your personal life. You always need a plan. Well, what's my plan as a teenager? I'm going to spend my summers doing this, and I'm going to work, and then I'm going to go to school in the school year, and I'm going to get good grades, and I kind of know what class I want to do and some extracurricular. Always have a plan, and then if other opportunities present themselves, then you take those. I don't know what it takes to find. Everyone's got different personalities, and again, when that passion's gonna. And you hear about these actors who are very successful, and they're like, I knew at 6 years old I was going to be an actor. And I'm like, man, I didn't know anything at 6 years old, right? But some of them do. You know, you read these biographies and you listen to their interviews, and they're like, man, I knew at 6 years old I was going to be an actor. And you're like,
Crazy. Yeah.
I mean, lucky you, right? Because man, I didn't really know what my passion was. Again, I did accounting, and then, you know, a buddy and I started an online marketing company. You know, that wasn't until I was about 30 years old, and we did that for 7-8 years, and then, you know, I sold my interest in that, and then I've spent the last 12 years investing in early stage companies, and I've really enjoyed that the last 12 years. It's been a very enjoyable part of my career. But everything's kind of led up to that. College led up to that, and accounting, and then I did a couple of years in software sales, and then, you know, had 7-8 years starting my own company with a buddy, and then I've spent 12 years investing, and you know, and they all just kind of build on each other. And who knows, maybe next year I'm going to learn something new and see a new path that takes me down another road. I don't know.
Well, that could happen.
Yeah, but along those lines about what you said about passion, one thing I hear from like a lot of people is that if you want to do like a business, you should do what you're passionate about, because someone that runs a business who isn't passionate about what they do, they're not going to be successful with it. But someone who's like motivated, driven, and enjoy what they do in a business, no matter whether it's like not successful in the moment, like, you know, if they keep taking it then and like working hard for it, then eventually they'll get it. So yeah, that's one thing that I think is,
you know, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you have a company that you are passionate about, that certainly helps. There's no doubt about it. And yet at the same time, as you look at 30 different companies, you'll realize if I'm marketing's marketing, and I can market 30 different companies, right? And still marketing's very similar.
yeah.
And there might be a little bit of deviation in how you market in that industry, but you know, you've got all these different marketing channels, and the reality is if you love marketing, you could market for 40 different companies, really. If you love to market and then you love the product or the company you're marketing for, that's even better, right? So there's no doubt that you do want to find something that you enjoy and you're passionate about, and again, you know, some are far more passionate than, you know, there are some entrepreneurs who are very successful that I actually have met a few that don't love their, you know, but if they're very good at it, they'll still do it, right? And so, you know, it's that fine line, but there's no doubt if you have a passion for your skill set or your product or company, that is very helpful.
Yeah. I know like a lot of people like of our age, like I know like quite a few who are like thinking of going into entrepreneurship, such as Zion and a few others from school. But I was just wondering, like, as an entrepreneur, what would you like give, like, advice would you give to someone who's like wanting to become an entrepreneur, such as like Zion or others?
Well, again, learn about that. There's so much online now.
Yeah.
So many books on entrepreneurship, and there's so many books on companies. I mean, I've read book after book after book about companies and they've started and the things they've gone through, and you know, you can read books all about the creation of Amazon or Microsoft or, you know, these big companies, because they all had a beginning as well. And so I think one is, you know, do a lot of reading, a lot on YouTube, courses. There are all sorts of entrepreneurial courses. I mean, there's so many things you can do. Now, you have to differentiate between, you know, intellectual understanding and learning versus real world experience, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to learn about something, it's another thing to go out and do it and to execute in the real world. And so you want both, right? In time you want both, but you know, a great place to start when you're really young is to, again, there's all sorts of incredible books on entrepreneurships. There are all sorts of courses. There are all sorts of video courses. There are all sorts of TED Talks and others that you can learn. Again, we live in an information age. There is nothing you can't go learn. If you wanted to spend 30 days and, you know, even 100 hours, you can learn so much about almost any subject you want, right? And you go back to Elon Musk, who might be the greatest current entrepreneur and maybe of all time, but you know, I think he learned that, hey, I can learn anything at any time. I can just read books, and there are experts out there, and there's anytime there's a problem, there's a solution, and there's information on how to you know, go about finding that solution. So again, once again, you've got so much information out there. Take advantage as much you can, and then also getting as much real world experience as you can as well.
I really like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, because when we were talking about entrepreneurship, you talked about like how the entrepreneurship like provide value to the people, like to provide value to society and stuff. So like, I really like what you said about that, because it just shows that like entrepreneurship is not all about making the money. It can also be like people who want to like help the community,
Giving value to others.
Yeah, giving value back to other people, and then obviously like capitalizing on it. But it's not all about like the money for some people. Like some people just
truly want to give value to others,
like help people and stuff.
Yeah.
So I really like what you said about that.
You know, and we live in a world today where there is a lot more awareness of social impact and corporate impact, and so most companies today, whether large, mid-sized, or even startup, I think there's more and more awareness of, what are we doing for society? And I think that is an amazing thing where, again, if you can find a problem and you're looking for a solution and a product or a service to that solution, I mean, yeah, being able to go out and provide that for the world is amazing. And again, I think most companies today are very aware and very cognizant of, I do want to do good to the world. People are very socially aware in the environment and community and people and if you can offer something amazing and be profitable, that's just a win-win, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, yeah, wait, just had something to say.
No. Oh, and one thing I can add to like that is what my uncle says is what he says is see a need and fill the need, and so that's one thing I always keep in mind when like I want to create value or make a business, is always just like see what people need in their lives or like find a problem and then obviously find a solution.
That's right.
And then as an added benefit make money from it. So yeah.
That's right, and the profits will come. I truly believe, listen, if you offer an incredible product or service, no matter what it is, the profits follow. They really do.
Yeah.
I mean, if your focus is, and again, we keep referencing Elon Musk, but he'll say it all the time, focus on your product, on your customer. Everything else is a little bit ancillary to that. But again, if you're trying to provide an incredible product or service and you'll just focus on that and the customers and how they're experiencing your product and what they're doing with it, I mean, the profits will come.
Yeah, like focus on helping other people and like providing value to them, and then they'll obviously want to like pay money to come get what you have for them because it's good, obviously.
Yeah.
And so like one question that I've always wanted to ask is that like what like advice would you give to your younger self if you were to like, I don't know, restart basically?
Boy, another great question. You guys are coming up with good ones.
Yeah. Like what would you do differently? Like, yeah.
Again, I wish I had, even when I was starting out, I mean, even the internet was quite early back then. That was in about 2000, so 22 years ago when I was coming out of college. Again, you didn't have nearly the amount of information, even though the internet was in its early stages and you could access, it's taken 20 years to put all that information into the internet and being able to access it. Continue to learn from those who have been successful. I mean, again, the appetite for reading and for consuming good information and learning, again, whether it's through courses or TED Talks or books, I think is one thing I would do more of. I would do much more of that than I did. And I think the other thing I would do is I wouldn't worry so much. I think coming back to I worried a lot, what am I going to do? Where's my career going to go? And I think especially when you come out of, again, whenever you start your entrepreneurial path, for me and many others, it's right after college. I mean, you really worry, where's this going to go? And I just don't think you can worry about it. I think, again, you need to learn and grow, and you need to acquire an incredible skill if you can, or learn an industry. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who go out into an industry and say, I'm going to go do this for 10 years. Maybe it's real estate. I'm going to learn real estate from the best real estate group I can, and I'm going to do that for 10 years, and then I'm going to go off and do it on my own. Or in any industry for that matter. I'm going to go and learn how to be an engineer and a coder, and I'm going to learn to code in these 5 languages or 2 languages, and I'm going to spend years learning that, and then I'm going to go do my own thing or whatever. So again, gaining as much knowledge as you can, gaining as much experience, skills, and then not worrying and just let life happen how it's going to. Always be open and not worry too much about it.
Yeah, talking about like life going on per se, like how do you see yourself in 10 years, like business wise or like financially wise?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball. I at this point, I have invested in several companies, and many of them are still in the early stages. We'll see how they do. My next, I don't know how much longer my career is, probably another good 15 years or so, but My intention is just to continue to work with early startups and help young entrepreneurs and to give them as much help as I can. Whether that's capital or advice or anything that I can offer and lend value to them. So, in 15 years, who knows where I'll be, but I do hope to continue to contribute. This, again, everyone's looking for a way to contribute to society, and to me, still, this is the greatest thing you can do. If you can help young companies with a great idea and concept and desire to build a service or product that they feel is going to be a value add to society, I just want to help with those. So, we'll see which ones do really well and which ones struggle, and we'll give them all the best help we can.
Yeah, I think it's great what you said about like earlier before Tim's question, like you're like about like investing in yourself and like learning as much knowledge as you possibly can. And I think that goes in line with a lot of what we said like in previous episodes. Like investing in yourself is the most important thing any like teenager can do right now, because
like the long-term benefits are overseen.
Yeah, like knowledge is power, and I think long-term, not the short-term.
I mean, it's really true. I mean, the best thing you can do is invest in yourself and your growth and development and your skill set, and make yourself valuable that people want you, right? I mean, people want somebody who can come and add value and have a skill set and can contribute, and the better you are at it, the more they want you and the more you can contribute. So
yeah, and like since you said like there wasn't the internet at all when you first started, like what kind of resources did you turn to that like really helped you become what you are like right now? I wish I had more back then, and I was quite a reader. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of self-help books and books on different facets of life. So, back then, this again 20 years ago, I spent a lot of time in Barnes and Noble just buying books on also on businesses and entrepreneurs and self-help and how to become better. And so I did invest in a lot of books back then. I'd go to Barnes and Noble and find the best self-help books and even a lot of the best self-help gurus out there, right? Just listening to as many as I can, some of them just on a personal level, some business, and invest in a lot of those books and audio. Some of them were cassettes back then. And that's about the best I could do, but it was very beneficial and I think helpful in my career.
Yeah, I mean, we've done an episode on books in the past, but do you have like 2 or 3 books that like really stood out to you and like really like made you who you are today? Like any like really important books that you've read that have helped you?
Boy, you're putting me on the spot. If I had my phone, I would pull that out. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I do it. In fact, if we went in my office right now, you'll see about 40 books on there.
Oh wow!
I'm trying to think if there are any that I just. I mean, some off just the top of my head. How to Win Friends and Influence People was an incredible book.
Yeah.
I've probably read that 5 times. The Richest Man in Babylon.
Matt loves that book.
On selling. Think and Grow Rich.
We need to read that. We all need to like read that.
As a Man Thinketh. Napoleon Hill. And then there are so many other other great business books. I can't think of any more, but those type of books, those are, several that I read very early in my career, and I think they're very beneficial from both a professional standpoint and a personal development standpoint.
Yeah, and you said something about like listening to like gurus. Like, do you have like any like people that you've like listened to that you think has really benefited you? Like, same as like the book question, I guess, but like more of like people and like advice and TED Talks and whatnot.
I'll do research on YouTube all the time. So, I was introduced to TED Talks about 10 years ago, and there's a lot of great gurus. I think 20 years ago when I started, I think one of the biggest one out there was Tony Robbins. He's that was kind of his prime when I was coming out of college, and I was listening to a lot of his stuff, and and then and then a lot of other business experts, and I wish I could think of some off the top of my head, but again, today it's just endless and nonstop what you can you can listen to. Again, back then, I think when I originally the first group I listened to was it wasn't Anthony Robbins, and it was a bunch of cassette tapes. That's where I started, and then a few years later we went to CDs, which was an amazing upgrade, and so today there are so many, and I just can't, none of them are just coming to my head right now, but I listen to TED Talks all the time. I listen just YouTube, if there's any subject you want to listen to, expert on operation, expert on finance, expert on personal development. I mean, you just put it in there and you got 50 options right off listed immediately.
Yeah, I guess what Finn was asking is like, is there anybody like in your life that was like really influential to like and like helped you in a lot of ways? Like, I don't know, like professors, teachers, mentors, or like parents or whatever.
Certainly my parents on a personal level. I mean, they certainly gave me a path and a character development, that's been second to none. As far as my professional life, I will honestly say everybody who has interacted with me. Mm-hmm. I mean, every stage of my life, there are consummate professionals out there who will bless your life. And I mean, I can think back to my EY days, and I spent a couple of years in software sales, and I know who those people are. And had a buddy, we started an online marketing company and did that for 7-8 years, and he was very influential and learned a lot from him. And then, the last 10-12 years, about every company I've invested in, and I probably won't even come up with any names, but there are many. I would say anyone that I worked with, you can learn from anybody. Meaning it's like anything in life. You can find people who are successful. You can find anybody you work with. Hey, make that a key in your life, that I'm going to learn one thing from this person, right? Mm-hmm. If I listen to a talk, what's one thing I can learn for this? If I listen to a YouTube video, what's one thing I can learn from it? I think if anything, one of the biggest problems today is we have too much information, in the sense that we have all this information we have access to, but what do we do to execute on that information? I mean, I've heard you can go read 100 books and not execute or apply anything to it, or you can maybe read one book and apply everything in it, just over and over and over again, right? And I think so many of us, we actually spend too much time consuming information and not enough time executing on what that information tells you. And I'm guilty of that. I will read an amazing book, or I'll hear an amazing book, and I'll shut it and go, man, that's amazing, and I'll put it down. I won't do a thing. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, man, I gotta learn about something that's going to change my life. And you go get another book another audio tape, and you listen to it, and it goes, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you close it and you shut it, and you do nothing with it, right? Yeah. I mean, the ability to apply that and execute that in your life, I mean, it would almost be better. They're probably, I've thought about it, and I thought I should never read another book. I should go back and read one book and apply it and read it again and apply it and read it again and apply it and just do that over and over again, and stop trying to find a bunch of new information. Yeah. Because there's already so much great information out there, and it's hard to apply, and execute on. So
I think it's amazing what you said about like just learn one thing from like everybody, like everything you see or hear. Because I read this book called like Atomic Habits.
And that's a good one.
Yeah, it's about like tiny changes. Mm-hmm. And so if you just like focus on, you don't have to like take in so much information, just like focus on tiny things, right? Learn about one thing. If you just focus on learning about one thing, and that one thing will like compound into like, and then if you keep learning like one thing from everything, it will obviously compound into like, the knowledge will compound.
That's right.
So that's great.
Yeah. James Clear, Atomic Habits. I've read that one. And again, that's another one where I've read and I've said, that's amazing. And I don't do enough to apply all the great tools and tips that he offers,
Yeah, I think that like, cause me and Zion, we listened to him talk. That was that guy at the meeting
Yeah, he was
Us
the one
three.
at
UVU.
Oh yeah.
The guy who talked,
That's
yeah.
right.
So we listened to him, and I think, like, just based off listening to him and listening to, like, the stories he told and the experiences he had, I think, like, I think he really knows what he's talking about, and I think, like, and that'd be a super good book for all of us to read, and I think
Which one?
Atomic Habits.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
was
okay.
that the book that mentioned the 2-minute rule, or was it different?
Oh, I saw that on a YouTube video.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think, I mean, again, things that we should all work on, and this is something that I would highly recommend, is people have to learn how to execute.
Yeah,
Right?
action.
Just action. Do. Stop thinking. I mean, get a plan and go and move and do things. And we spend way too much talking about things, even in business. We can spend hours on a whiteboard and all this great vision, but in the end, someone's got to go do all the work and the heavy lifting and the execution. And it's just, no different than a book where it's like, hey, you got to go out and you got to just execute. I mean, if there was one thing I wish I could do is, teach people to execute better, including myself. Just what does it take to execute, right?
Yeah.
So anything you can do to help you in that area, I think is very valuable.
Yeah, I guess you just need to write a book. Teach people how to execute.
Well, that's right. That's
Execute
right.
action.
That's right.
Atomic Executes.
There you go.
I think that's kind of like what Atomic Habits is about.
Sure.
Because he like makes everything like so simple. It's like about the tiny changes in your life that's actionable. Because the main reason like people don't do stuff is because they think it's too hard. So instead of like saying, oh, I'm gonna work out 30 minutes tomorrow, you can say, I'll just work out for 5 minutes. And you do that for a whole week, then you created a habit, and you will like increase that. Like,
Then you can bump the time up.
Yeah,
and
bump
just, like,
the
once
time
you
up.
get the habit down, the time doesn't really
yeah, exactly.
at that point, as long as you're doing it consistently.
I'm also a big planner where, even today, I like the paper planner. I may be the only one still doing this, but I will really map out my day.
Oh, my mom does that too.
Right? And I even map out your leisure time, right? You
Yeah.
say, hey, listen, I'm going to do this and this and this.
minutes of Fortnite.
And, well, you don't want too much Fortnite in there, but, you really want to just execute and be productive all day long, even if it's, hey, for this 30 minutes, I'm going to veg. Because then it's at least plan vegging, right? Or relaxing or leisure. And it's not just I'm doing it because I'm
Bored or
I'm
have nothing
bored
else to
or-
do.
That's right. Or I'm losing focus, right? So even when your leisure is planned, then it's a little more enjoyable because I'm gonna plan for the next 3 minutes to do nothing, or do something casual or whatever that is. So
Yeah. We should all get planners, actually.
Yeah, we should start making calendars.
Yeah.
That'd be sick. Yeah.
one of the books, I'll tell you one other book that I loved is The One Thing.
Oh, my dad read that.
That's a great book, and I do that every day. I write down, and I do 3. I do, what are 3 things I've got to get done today? Because, in my world, I find I can work 10, 12 hours a day and be busy all day long, but maybe not get anything really important done. I can be on the phone all day, I can be in meetings all day, but, do I get the 1 or 2 things done that are really, really important? And so that's a great book called The One Thing, and that's about doing the most important thing, and that, if nothing else, stick to that. So
I think that's
Yeah.
great. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so this whole podcast, we've been talking about passion, and thank you, Dewey, for sharing
Yeah,
all
of
of your
course.
advice. That was really great. I loved all the stuff you said.
Yeah, very
Um,
educational.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
like
probably go
that a
back.
lot.
I'll probably go back and watch this again just to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually fun.
Yeah. So if you guys stuck to the end, we'd like to thank you. If you haven't followed our social medias, go do that in the description down below.
New videos every week, so look out for that.
If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, leave them in the comments. We'll read them.
All right,
I
thank
think
you
that's
so
a
much.
wrap.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
great being with you.
Yeah, thank you.